Y'all feel like our generation worse or the generation before us was worse? Cause I ain't gonna lie, our generation grits, but the generation before us, I feel like the only thing that you could say that make our generation worse is that it's more televised and that we got social media with it and niggas dissing on social media. Niggas, you could go on social media and see somebody get clapped, but the way they used to be, nah, bruh.
Heads. Look at these boys. What if I told you that this was the most dangerous generation of gangbanging in Chicago? These guys. But don't just take my word for it. Look at the numbers. Unfortunately, Chicago averaged about 500 to 600 murders a year. But 1974 was by far the deadliest year in the city's history. 70 murders a month. For reference, there still hasn't been a worse decade in Chicago. So when my mom and them say, you young people messed up the streets, we used to be able to walk around without worry about getting shot. I can forgive her for not remembering 50 years ago. I've been lied to.
Bruh.
Through my whole life. They told me back in the day, gangs was about the community, buying the kids.
That. Yo, even... Nah, I'm not even gonna say that.
School supplies and making sure they was in the house when the street lights came on. These numbers ain't nothing to play with, but it wasn't just Chicago. New York City was seeing almost 2,000 murders a year, unheard of in any country outside of Central and South America. I've been sitting up here preaching about what drill did to us in the past 15 years, but how could this be possible? My pops graduated in 1974, and that man act like wasn't nothing going on but people smoking Reggie joints and Woodstock. So what did drill actually do to our streets today? Now, I don't like to get too deep into conspiracy theories, but the drill being connected with the prison system is definitely one I'm almost tempted to believe. But then again, I'm from Chicago, so let's go over my personal experience. Now, I'm old. I was in high school at the same time as guys like King Von, Chief Keef, and Tay Capone, and I can say that it definitely wasn't just prison taking the killers off the street. Get back.
Yo. Before the video even start for real, y'all feel like our generation worse or the generation before us was worse? Cause I ain't gonna lie, our generation grits, but the generation before us, I feel like the only thing that you could say that make our generation worse is that it's more televised and that we got social media with it and niggas dissing on social media. Niggas, you could go on social media and see somebody get clapped, but the way they used to be, nah, bruh. Even my parents, bruh, they went through some shit. I mean, come on, bro.
It's always played a huge role. Let me explain. I went to school with a guy that dropped a song and was killed 5 days after.
But I ain't gonna lie, if he talk about drill music, I could feel that, cause at the same time, low key, cause it's a lot of niggas that listen to music and the music turn them up. You feel me? So a nigga could be listening to that drill shit. He turned up. This is what I wanna be. This is what I wanna do.
The music video dropped. This is not as fast as when Lil Mark dropped No Competition and was killed 3 days later, but I didn't know Lil Mark. Unfortunately, a fucked up memory that I'll never forget is when I was smoking at a girl's house back in 2014 and another girl walked in and said, "You wanna see Lil Mark's baby?" And she brought in his infant son, who is his spitting image. And unfortunately for this kid, who's about 11 years old now, the internet exists. And I just pray he doesn't let it get to him if he sees anything about his father. And that's one of the main differences from the 70s and now. If we didn't have the numbers, we wouldn't have a clue what happened back then. But for kids like Baby Mark, the evidence is all too clear. But back to Don D. I never heard this kid talk much. I knew he was bad like a lot of kids he hung around, but at the time, there still hadn't been any drill rappers getting any motion outside of the main faces we know today and their affiliates. So when I saw his music videos, I was shocked. I knew very well about the new war that was starting in his area, but there hadn't really been any murders connected to these guys yet. You see, they were a younger branch of the Evans mob, a clique that had been at war for the whole decade before these guys jumped off the porch. And this war made no sense to me. Rumors eventually killed the original reason for any beef, but as I remember, it started over a fight essentially. And some older guys came back with guns, but the guys they shot at came back and took over half the neighborhood. Definitely not something you see every day. I remember several GD and even neutral blocks flip BD under the threat from the other side, but I know it was over nothing.
Yo, is it more GDs or BDs?
I had a homie back in the day who personally involved himself so deep in this war despite having no other reason than I guess he just didn't want to get bullied into flipping or changing his nation. The thing is, there was nothing that serious about the nation he was with. He was only walking around saying he was GD essentially because the older guys agreed that he was. But they were just looking at him as another body that would be in the way in case bullets started flying. One of the big guys was even having sex with his sister. So back to this guy. He became a rapper in the summer, and only 3 songs in, he was dead by December, 5 days after his last video dropped. And of course, it was his most disrespectful song. So what did this prove? The streets of Chicago are safer than they were in the 70s and the 90s when the murder rate got back to where it was in the 70s, but now it just seems so much worse. Maybe it's because the guys heavily involved were getting younger and younger, but what happened to this guy in the years leading up to his hood jumping in the streets was the drill scene made it more appealing to be in his life. This guy wasn't from the safest neighborhood, but historically it's a neighborhood full of black judges and police officers. And a lot of guys in this area never starved growing up or lived that deep in poverty. Just look at Bloodhound Lil Jeff and Q50. A lot of their family hails from around this neighborhood, and I even grew up with one of his cousins. These guys came from black families with money. It's just that playing ball and owning your own business became less appealing. Just think about this. When you were in high school, especially in the city, there were very few things that seemed more important to you than having the best outfits to come to school in and making your lifestyle look appealing on social media. And right before the drill took off, I remember how toxic it was getting. The late 2000s on Facebook in Chicago was just full of kids dropping the 5 because it looked cool on pictures, even though this was disrespecting the whole nation, something that wouldn't have even been played with 10 years before this. And little guys standing on the block just having to throw up something with their hands to look good for the picture, even if they had no real affiliation. When trying to fit in became associated with gang culture, we had a problem. And that's why I salute the kids even more that grew up in these areas and were mature enough not to try this to look cool. My old homie that I mentioned earlier, he migrated a few blocks down once it became too hot for him to continue walking around his own block. He was such a target that we used to have to walk him home in a group just to make him look like less of a target, even though we didn't even have a gun. But when he went down to this other hood with these guys he barely knew, they got pulled over riding around one day, and one of the older guys had a gun on him. Like older guys do in the hood, he told my homie that he was gonna have to take the rap for this gun. My homie stood up for himself and said no, and the other guy ended up going to jail. But from that day, the rest of the
take your charge. Wait, hold up.
Guys in that hood told him that if he ever came back, they would kill him. And
what? You see, bruh? They get slimy. Let me see though.
One of the older guys had a gun on him. Like older guys do in the hood, he told my homie that he was gonna have to take the rap for this gun. My homie stood up for himself and said no, and the other guy ended up going to jail. But from that day, the rest of the guys in that hood told him that if he ever came back, they would kill him. And with rules like this,
I ain't gonna lie, if that's your dog and you know his circumstances, I feel like, yo, if you got if your shit clean and you know if he get picked up for this gun, he about to do time for real. And if you get picked up for the gun, it's gonna be less. And then if you know your older homie's gonna have that bond money for you, that's different. That's organized crime right there. You feel me? Literally. But you know, you never know they shit. But take your charge though. How you gonna get mad at somebody for
it's a wonder that the streets ain't more dangerous. They was probably bluffing though, and he even made it out the hood and ended up going to college. In fact, going down to visit him in college was my first experience for real with how people was living outside of Chicago, and honestly something that made me want to go to college. I remember just walking around being amazed that we could walk around from midnight to 5 o'clock in the morning without hearing a single gunshot. That's messed up. But this goes back to the structure being lost. Nobody takes their own weight, but honestly it seems like the biggest thing structure did in Chicago was cause more murders, because it seems like back in the 70s and 80s when the guys told you to do something, you just did it without question, including killing your own community. And I saw the remnants of this system trickle down into my generation, but the every man for himself mentality kind of killed it, because it started to look goofy for you to listen to another man, because man will mislead you in a heartbeat, and that seems to be one of the few things that at least kids starting in my generation understood growing up. But even still, it seems like back in the day, there was still some things considered off limits, like women and children, and we know that's not true today. And maybe this has something to do with my generation. I'll never forget, I knew a girl that got her face turned black and blue because after school one day, I think she went to either Inglewood or Perspectives, but she was talking crazy to one of the gang members, and she let something disrespectful about one of his dead homies slip out her mouth, and he ended up giving her a 2-piece McNugget, no drink, no fries, no napkins. And then she tried to call her brother up to the school, but this is a main way that girls get their brothers killed. killed. My cousin went to Inglewood High School back in the 2000s, and there was a famous basketball player. He was definitely on his way to college and probably even to the NBA after that. But when his sister got into it with some guys at the school and she called her brother up like any sister would, ain't no guys trying to hear about you calling your brother to do nothing to them. So when he got there, they killed him.
Call your brother. Call your brother. I ain't gonna lie. Hey, it is what it is. Don't let that matter.
Now, his brother did end up making it to the NBA, and I think he might have played overseas too. But it's sad that his brother didn't get to see it. But still, it's even stranger that with nothing being off limits, New York, Chicago, and even LA still have not gotten anywhere near the level of violence that they saw 30 to 50 years ago. Speaking of misleading, I gotta add in that even though everything people do is broadcasted on the internet today, pictures and videos from years ago never disappearing, people will still spread rumors that put other people's lives in danger. When the guy I mentioned earlier in this video died, I specifically remember people in the hood spreading rumors that he got killed leaving a girl's house. Only the police say he got killed on 81st and Champlain, over a mile away from the girl's house that got blamed. Regardless, this rumor put her life in danger, and she ended up moving out the state. And all of this in this video can be summed up as the spread of information being more prevalent now than ever. Some people out of town who've never been would never even consider going.
Yeah, so what y'all think? Y'all think drill made the world more dangerous? I don't know. I just feel like drill, I don't think it made it more dangerous. I feel like drill made it seem more fun. And it seemed more enticing to be part of it. That's how I feel though. Y'all boys like, comment, subscribe, drop down what y'all want me to react to.
I want y'all motherfuckers to subscribe to ForeignTooBusy. Don't give a fuck. Better subscribe, motherfucker. If not, security gonna get your ass. Pop, pop.